Under 30 seconds. about it.
Right. Full disclosure, were you talking to fans?
Yes.
You weren't. You didn't go there to talk to fans.
You
went there to buy toy cars.
I did, but I was talking to them at the store selling the toy cars. I've got one for Ben Keating to sign later.
Now, and we were talking yesterday and watching cars on track. You said there aren't many places I come where I go, oh, I want to be back in a car again. This is one of them, though, isn't it?
Yeah, there's something about this circuit where, you know, it's. I think because of the time I had with Toyota, it was a circuit we visited quite often, an area we visited often as well for the PR and marketing side of things on top of that. And had great success at this track, and it's just got a good flow to it as well. It's got a mix of everything. It's got the fast-flowing corners in the middle of Sector 2, and you arrive into Sector 3, a much tighter part of the track, off-camber corners. It's a circuit where it is a compromise. The engineers have to work hard trying to find that compromise with this long straight. It's 1.5 kilometers long, just under a mile long, and you arrive at this part of the track and around that final sector, like I say, where you're really having to scratch around and feel the grip of the car. Yeah, it's just a circuit that makes you think from inside the car, think where to carry the speed. And yeah, I always enjoyed it. So when I watched them going around yesterday, it's also a great circuit to come and view from. Yep. You got a section around turn 5 and 6 that you can look down on, and you just get a good feeling of the speed of the cars they carry there.
Just to explain what's going on here, there are 5 buses on track for the Circuit Safari. They pause opposite the pits after the first lap, and the passengers swap sides, so everybody gets a view from both sides of the bus. It is, I love the differences in automotive and sporting culture in all the countries that we come to, but there's something undeniably special and different about this country, and the way in which the fans embrace it. Just came, as I said, under the underpass from the fan zone, bumped into family with young son, I'd suggest maybe 7 or 8 years old, with fully tailored replica Peugeot Hypercar overalls. I've never seen the like. It's just great.
The interesting thing about this session is that you are supposed to, and it's recommended that you don't absolutely go for it, because it is just supposed to be trundling around for the buses out there full of passengers to get a flavour of what it's like to be on a racetrack with racing cars going past you. But when you actually get into the car, it's funny how you just ignore, you get used to it. You get used to these massive vehicles out on track, and you start going for it, and taking the same kind of risks that you usually would in any given practice or race session. So this is what you're watching here.
You're completely right. It's outrageous to imagine that we're going to get those kind of speeds. Anyway, fastest in session at the moment, James Calado with a 1:39.422.
And the full free practice session will follow this, but there are only 4 cars that have not left the pit lane, so everybody's not sitting there going, well, this is ridiculous, it's a waste of our time, and da-da-da-da-da. They're going, hang on a minute, first free practice was wet, proper wet, second free practice was dry, it's wet again, forecast for tomorrow is that it's supposed to be dry, forecast for this morning was that it was supposed to be dry, so suddenly everybody going, in first free practice, we're going out because a lot of teams have not been here before, a lot of cars have not been here before, particularly in Hypercar. But then on the other hand, now you're starting to go, well, it might be like this on race day. And for anybody who's a fan of WEC, this is a very familiar sort of weather pattern here. We have had lots of races with long red flag periods because of rain and low cloud. And the cloud is rolling down the mountain towards the back of the main grandstand. So once that comes over the grandstand, then the marshals on the front straight, as you said, Ant, 1.5 kilometres long. I mean, we toss that away glibly. You know, that's the longest straight in the championship.
Yeah, it's the shortest track in the calendar, just 4.5 kilometres or 2.8 miles long. But like you said, it's that long straight that really separates and creates the headache for the engineers of how to come up with the perfect balance of setup. Because it is that absolute compromise, because otherwise you would just stick the downforce on the car and create a car that was maybe stiffer in ride to deal with those higher speed corners of turn 4, 5, 6. But you can't. You have to think about that long straight as well. You can't ignore it.
This looks like something out of a lockdown Formula One driver's evening, doesn't it? Racing buses against hypercars. I mean, that shot from overhead. Now, actually, good evening in the United States. I had a message yesterday evening. In fact, I had a number of messages about this session. Is Circuit Safari happening? Yes, it is. We're back. But also about the undulations in the track. Let's hear from the Toyota team.
Okay, Seb, reminder to check the steering. For us, it looks okay. And you have buses just ahead of turn 1. So into the braking zone of turn 1, probably all the way to turn 3.
All right, so that was half a lap ago. Check the steering. What did he curb it on the way in or something? Got the tracking out. Anyway, about the undulations in the circuit, and it's something that cameras never really show you. Everybody understands you come uphill a bit out of Eau Rouge. You don't come uphill a bit out of Eau Rouge. It's like a wall of tarmac that just keeps on going. If you've ever walked up the straight Rédillon, then you know it's just murder. And here, the undulations are much greater than the cameras show. It always makes everything look flat. When you turn out of turn 1, you plunge downhill, then there's the sort of rise in the middle as you come down towards the final sector, and then again, corkscrewing up the hill through the final sector, Anthony. I mean, that's part of the reason why the tyres are working so hard, not just because it's tight and twisty, but also because it's like a mountain switchback going up, and you've got to come onto the straight absolutely hell for leather, otherwise you die 1,000 deaths coming down this long straight.
These kind of greasy conditions that we have here, it's not fully raining, it's just sort of mist in the air that's coming down, so a bit of a mizzle.
Maybe
it's changed since I'm just actually looking out the commentary box window.
We were outside watching.
It's raining. It's raining.
It is.
We're outside watching all the fans setting up all their camping equipment and the massive amounts of stuff they're bringing for the weekend.
So if it is kind of like we had yesterday in FP1, a bit more of just a damp session, it's the surface, this track, that really eats into the tyres. So it can get greasy very quickly around here. And we heard a lot of teams struggling towards the end of FP1 when it started to dry to like a damp line, that they were losing grip instead of actually going quicker. And I've experienced that firsthand around this circuit, where you feel like the conditions should be getting quicker as the checkered flag comes out for this session.
Checkered flag is out, checkered flag is out. First car to see the checkered flag will be car 25. At the same time, we are roughly at 7 minutes to start FP3.
So the safety car driver has been timing the speed of the buses. It's going to take 7 minutes to get them back to the finish line and get them all out of the track.
So if you're joining us, we know there's an awful lot of new fans joining the WCTV broadcast.
Was the first car to see the checkered flag.
I'm confused as to what's going on. Just to explain, this is Circuit Safari. It's very Japanese concept, although it does happen elsewhere. Let's have a listen before I explain that. So what's going on with the 38 Jota?
Yeah, probably the strange noise from the car is still there. I don't think it's engine, but it's something that is rotating, like drive shafts or I don't know, but it's still there and it's not good rev.
Antonio Felix da Costa, worrying report about the Hertz Team Jota Porsche Hypercar.
But just to explain, because I know there's been some questions on the chat on YouTube, this is Circuit Safari.
This time absolutely. Of day?
But what this is fans attending the race can then put their names forward in a lottery, and the successful fans are invited to join one of what's 5, I think there's 1 media bus, 4 fan buses, and they get to go out for a 20-minute session with cars on track around them. It's carefully controlled, safety cars front and rear, drivers instructed as to how they're expected to behave when passing that train.
Flat out.
And most of them completely ignore it. But it is a fantastic part of the atmosphere here at Fuji Speedway.
What it isn't is a whole load of British touring car drivers racing buses in the way that they would do in a Top Gear special. You know, like they used to use all those airport trolleys and milk floats and so on, caravans. So it is. I mean, you've been on the bus, Graham, and I've not had that experience. Along with
Goodyear blimp,
not being in
Seen
the Goodyear
the mountain.
blimp, a Spitfire over
anything
Goodwood.
Fun?
No,
anything fun?
Anything fun, no. I mean, it must just be so bizarre
Here's
to
the thing.
see racing cars going by the window.
I'd seen this done through YouTube and video back in Group C days, and it's one of those things, it looks so bizarre, and being given the opportunity to be part of it, as I was for I think the first 2 years, doing some TV work on the bus, you're kind of looking forward. It's so much better than it looks. It's so much better than it looks. Despite the fact we've got this privileged access to these cars and to these races, and we can at times go trackside. It's not like that. It's not like that at all. And
so did you get more of an appreciation of the speed of the cars by being in that bus than just watching at the side of the track?
The sound of the cars is different because you're a completely different part of it. It's an awesome experience.
Take a look at what Toyota have done here. You can see the yellow marks on the pit box for where they're going to be refueled and have the tyre changes, but there's an angled white box, so they're expecting to come in or to have to deal with coming in together. The pit lane here is, I mean, it's not antique. It's not the same one that James Hunt was in and Niki Lauda in 1976, but it's the same footprint. And in fact, we've got so many cars here that we've had to add cars into what would be a sort of a support race pit lane a little bit further along. So we've got a couple of cars parked further down. But they're obviously expected to come in a full pit lane and have got marks, stop in this box, not just at random wherever you like.
Actually, I think the two teams are down. It's the second year in succession we've had both Vector Sports and GR Racing down in the, if you like, the B pits. But they've played a blinder because they've got 3 garages each. It's luxury down there.
It's almost as nice as most of the tents. So this track, well, at the end of the first 1.5 kilometres straight, turn into turn 1. Hard braking, and the problem with turn 1 is it drops away immediately downhill. And it's always a potential overtaking point when you're working through traffic, Anthony, and then your favourite part of the circuit.
I love turn 5 into turn 6, a really difficult corner to get right, and that carries you all the way down that straight, up and over the hill actually, towards the Dunlop corner in turn 10. That's a downhill section, braking into that tight right-hander makes braking very tricky, easy to lock a wheel into there. A brilliant circuit, like I said, 4.5 kilometres long, 2.8 miles, and 15 corners. All of them, you really have to think from inside the car. Yes, it is a great track to come to with, just 2 more, including this one, 2 more to go in the championship.
Yeah. Toyota have won 8 of the previous 9 World Endurance Championship races there. Hands up, who knows who won the one that Toyota didn't win? Go, Graham.
Porsche.
Correct. And they have won 7 of the last 8 in a row. So possibly slight favourites?
You would definitely say they're the favourites around this circuit. Like you say, yeah, 8 victories out of 9 attempts is pretty impressive. They hold the record. But of course, a lot of those victories came in a time when they didn't have much competition, or any, during some points. But before that, in the LMP1 days, of course, you had Porsche and Audi. And, but even despite that level of competition, it was always a circuit where that car performed well. I don't know if the team raised their game any more than where they race at other circuits, but they definitely feel that pressure and anticipation from the fan base. And you've got the factory, the Toyota factory, just down the road from here, where they whisk the drivers to. Every single year they come a few days early to make sure they can visit the thousands of employees that, like I say, are very local to this track.
Famously, of course, everybody knows that Suzuka is owned by Honda. This track is owned by Toyota. Stoffel van Dorn here in the Peugeot returns to the World Endurance Championship, but for the first time in a hypercar. So he's in place of Nico Muller. We are getting ready to go into our final free practice session. 1 last hour to set up the cars. I mean, it's
1 minute to the start of pre-practice 3. For your info, track has been declared wet. Rain lights must be on in low mode. 1 minute to the start of the session.
2 things are significant in declaring it a wet track. Not stating the bleeding obvious, oh look, it's wet. Yes, we have noticed, if you don't officially declare it a wet track, teams are not allowed to use wet tyres.
Correct.
So that's a very fundamental bit of housekeeping, and also it means if it's declared wet, you must have your high-intensity rear lights on, like that Aston Martin doesn't, but when it fires up, it will do. So
15 seconds.
That was a comedy pause.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Pit exit is now green. Pit exit is now green. This is the 6 Hours of Fuji free practice 3.
So just a couple of bits of housekeeping as well. On the top right, you'll see the full race on Sunday at FIAWEC.com, and also it was mentioning the fact that you, in about 10 days, will be able to see what went on behind the scenes in our full access program. If you've not seen any of those, I really suggest that between now and qualifying, or after qualifying before the race, or after the race itself, you go to the YouTube channel for World Endurance Championship and take a look. There is some really, really great stuff. It's not orchestrated, it's not scripted, it's all fly-on-the-wall stuff. And right from the beginning of the championship in Sebring this year, there's some really, really revealing behind-the-scenes stuff. It gives you an idea of what it's like to be in these teams, in these races. And if you want to know how brutalizing Le Mans is, the Le Mans episode will give you every indication as to what that's like.
Other quick thing is, if you've not seen any of the full access shows on YouTube, there's still time to submit your excuses in a note from your parents or another responsible adult. It really is. It's excellently done. The access the teams allow has been, I think, pretty spectacular.
Yeah.
Start the session, and you won't see for the first 5 minutes of this session two of the cars, the number 98 car or the number 41. That's the Aston Martin Race in the Heart of Racing livery car, or the 41 Team WRT Hypercar. Both those cars are getting 5-minute stop and hold penalties for track limits violations in a previous session. That was Alex Riberas in the Aston Martin and Rui Andrade in the Hypercar. This is something we've seen in recent races, is race control taking that opportunity to reinforce that we haven't forgotten what happened yesterday. We had another one of them yesterday for something happened in FP1, and that was crossing the white line at pit exit, which is something Eduardo's
that
really
was into Europol, so they were parked at the beginning of FP2. And you can see the white line at pit exit is right in the braking area for turn 1, so it is crucial for safety.
Feels like a slightly dry line into turn 10. And level 12, 13 a little bit.
Yeah, so turn 10's the that hairpin that we talked about when you saw the circuit map. As Mike works his way around turn 5, and this is a short straight before turn 6. In the wet conditions, without the traffic in your way, it's more grip on the outside of the corner. I saw a few of those cars doing that yesterday in FP1 as Pascal Vasselon looks on.
Andre Lotterer there, and Andre confirming yesterday that his career in single-seaters is over. He's decided that
at the tender age of only 52.
Absolutely, and that you know, a huge success. Super Formula in its Formula Nippon days, I think, back here as a title win,
and in Super Formula, he was a winner here in Super Formula recently.
6 seasons in Formula E, and with the switcheroo that's happened in Formula E, he's taken the opportunity to make it clear his focus is now here with the Porsche Penske efforts, and welcome home permanently, Andre Lotterer. He's very welcome back.
And he said, we were talking to him about, you know, what's it like to be back in the World Endurance Championship and back where he said, I'm at home. I am back home. And so now, I mean, he was, you know, he's had 3 or 4, 5, 4 seasons now in Formula E. Six now. But the last 3 as a Porsche driver, and then, you know, as soon as that move happened, and as soon as Antonio Felix da Costa was announced as a Porsche Formula E driver, you went, okay, well, we know what Hypercar they're going to be, and don't we? And that's all part of it. Now, in terms of Hypercar, we've got 13 different cars. Only 2 of the manufacturers have ever raced here in the Hypercar before. So Toyota have, Peugeot did last year as well, so they've got that knowledge, but The Porsche Penske crew, the Jota Team Hertz crew, and the Proton Porsche crew have not raced these cars here before. Ferrari have not raced their hypercar here before. Van Wall have not raced their hypercar here before. Cadillac have not raced their hypercar here before either. So there is a lot of learning. So yes, there's a lot more competition for Toyota in terms of numbers, but none of them are coming in here with the experience and the knowledge that Toyota has.
There is also another difference here with the opposition for Toyota, and that is the Ferrari difference. This is the only circuit so far this year that Ferrari have not tested at. So they've tested at every other one of the circuits in the FIA World Endurance Championship, have not had the opportunity, of course, to test here in Fuji. Will test before Bahrain, by the way, at Bahrain International Circuit. And it's going to be interesting, Anne, to see just what difference that has in their level of preparation coming in here. Because as you quite rightly said, the one thing that Toyota have got an awful lot of here is data.
Data, circuit knowledge. I mean, the drivers know their way around this track, and that's one of the biggest challenges, actually. It's a difficult circuit to learn, difficult for the driver to understand where to carry the speed, as I mentioned before, but also for the team and how to set up that car. So with that data missing from Ferrari's perspective, I feel like, yeah, they should be on the back foot in year one, as you'd naturally expect. But if you can go testing at these kind of circuits before you race there, you can gain an awful lot of that knowledge as well. So they could be on the back foot coming into this weekend.
On board here with one of our two local teams, Car Guy and D Station are both stationed within a mile of the circuit gate. So this isn't just a local race because they're in Japan, this is a local race because they're in the same postcode as their home factory.
But there's a neat segue here with what Ant was talking about with Toyota. This is aboard the car, it is Ritomo Miyata, who is the Toyota Gazoo Racing development driver, effectively. Last person who held that position, Ryo Hirakawa, and look where he is now.
Yep.
So this happened very late. It's Daniel Serra with some travel difficulties getting to Fuji, and Miyata-san stepping in for his WEC debut.
I saw it with Kazuki Nakajima around this circuit, so he was the original Japanese driver within TMG in Cologne. The racing division of Toyota in Cologne, and who were running the car in the early days of that program. And I saw it with him whenever we came to this track, because of his circuit knowledge compared to us European racers, it was clear to see that he stood out here compared to other tracks.
Yeah,
wet or dry, particularly in the rain, he knew exactly where to place that car and was incredibly fast as well. So we always used to joke about it, you know, Kazuki, home track for him. He used to live in Gotemba as a young racing driver, and this was his playground, and we saw the speed that he had around here.
And it's not just the Japanese drivers either, it's drivers. So while João Paulo de Oliveira has raced here for over 20 years.
Yeah.
So he's I mean, Andre Lotterer only sold his house in Gotemba within the last 3 or 4 years, and he's still got a place in Tokyo. And remember James Rossiter?
Oh yes,
you know,
absolutely.
was brought in specifically for his knowledge of this track, and suddenly took like a cataclysmic leap in performance, because although they still didn't know the Peugeot, boy did he know how to get the best out of anything on this track, and that knowledge makes a huge difference.
Am I hearing from Louise?
Oh, you are. I'm not hearing from Louise. Louise Beckett is in the pit lane. Good morning, Louise. Is it raining there also?
Hey.
Yeah,
Right.
good information there, Louise, because that fits with the message from Mike Conway, doesn't it? Saying that the track's starting to dry. And I did see around that final sector when we were talking about the Car Guy Ferrari, it is getting a dry line. That Porsche there goes out on wet still.
Yeah,
but it's interesting to hear that slicks are getting prepared.
Yeah, I wonder, because we were watching the Car Guy Ferrari sliding through corners, you know, and still the wipers are on, and still there is water beading up the windscreen, so it hasn't stopped drizzling. not sure you're going to get...
I think it's a brave move.
You've got to try.
Yeah.
You've got to try because you need that data for the race.
Apparently at the end of FP1, where the circuit looked very similar to this, I must say, apparently Ferrari did venture out on slick tyres. It wasn't faster,
no.
But again, it's just building that knowledge base.
It's the data.
Yes.
It's like when Fernando Alonso was blasting around in a Toyota in the rain on his own at Le Mans in one of the practice sessions. Nobody else bothered, but he needed to know, what's it like when you go out on an intermediate? What's it like when you go from wet to slick? What's it like when you go from slick to inter? I need this knowledge for the race. I don't know this stuff, and that's what you're doing now.
So the drivers need that knowledge in where to place the car, where to brake as well. You'll see lots of different lines actually when the track, hopefully when it starts to dry out more and more, you'll see them veering off perhaps of the racing line, because that's where all the rubber is and the oils that come off the car, and they go to the inside line to brake before getting back on. Oh, a bit of damage there on the right hand side of that WRT41.
That's the car that started the session late.
But the teams also need to know the crossover points of the tyres. So as the track starts to dry, or even from a dry track going to more of a wet circuit, when do you have to go on to the wet tyre? Of course, no intermediate tyre anymore.
Well, so listen in to what's going on aboard the number 5 Porsche Penske 963 with Fred Macko.
Fred, car 6 going to slicks, so we stay out for reference.
Exactly
Spot
what
on.
we're talking about.
A bit of a moment there for the 56
well,
car.
He's on the slick tyres, isn't he? As Louise pointed out, so this is going to be a little bit of a spin. There we go, on the exit of turn 1.
PJ Hyatt aboard Rexy.
No tyre warmers, of course, as well on top of that. I think you might have mentioned that, Martin, already, but makes your job even harder.
The story of Rexy is that it's PJ Hyatt's daughter said, why can't we have a car that... Son, rather.
Yep.
Said, why can't we have a car that looks like a dinosaur? So they have, T-Rex. Have slightly missed the opportunity to go full Godzilla here.
Zilly.
I know, but it doesn't look like Godzilla. It looks more like
I'm glad you mentioned it. Okay, there's a reason I'm glad you mentioned
the
it.
little arms on the side pods.
Absolutely.
Away.
We are in an era of convergence, okay, between the FIA World Endurance Championship and the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship. And joining us this morning from a hotel room near Road America is the epic Shea Adam, and she's at the moment watching the session with none other than Amanda Jeanette.
Right, okay.
Wife of Gunnar Jeanette. And Amanda is, I gather, wanting some feedback as to just what Gunnar thought being out there with the buses. I will say, Amanda, he was struggling to catch the buses at one point, but it's great to have you both with us, ladies. Look forward to seeing you IMSA trackside very soon.
Gunnar Jeanette thrown under the bus.
I'm afraid so, literally under the bus. But look, this is, I think this effort, it was family oriented. That's why they did it. But what they're discovering at AO Racing with Team Project One with the Rexy effort here and in America, where they've had the pink version racing, Roxy last time out, is where I think some of these teams might be missing a trick with marketing. Watch this space for people learning lessons, because I was over again, I'll say it, in the fan zone a little earlier, where we do have some event shirts in the WEC booths for that effort, and there was a queue for those shirts.
Of course there is, and you know, for the last 2 years, half the population of the planet has been going, where's the Iron Dames merch? Why can't we have this stuff? Because hello television broadcasters particularly, people love this kind of racing and are watching it in increasing numbers. So, you know, all of that fan relationship, all of those fan relationships really work. Well, those wets have come off in pretty decent nick. The little holes there, though, unfortunately.
A bit of blistering. Yeah, that's a bit of blistering.
A lot of blistering, so...
Yeah, so that's come from... The blistering comes obviously from the overheating, but from internally in the tyre, and it works its way to the surface. So obviously a true sign that they're getting too hot, and the number 5 comes in now to put the slick tyres on. So that's interesting. They've had always another spin for Rexy down at turn 6 on the slick tyres. So really struggling there. We're going to see a replay that actually is on the braking, isn't it? Just carried way too much speed in, locks the inside front, and then gets into a bit of a half spin mid-corner.
All PJ's doing is he's taking the Gilles Villeneuve approach, which is just find out where the limit is.
Just a unique way in warming up the tyres.
Absolutely.
Yeah, just this part of the track here. This is the dry part. See the slightly lighter line there? That's the drier part of the track. So the drivers will be confined to that kind of single track style as they hunt for the dry line. And the Jota Porsche exits the final corner. They're topping the timesheets at the moment. Last lap was a 1:35.4. Interestingly, the number 5 Porsche that's just come in with Fred Makawiki at the wheel, their last lap was a 1:42 on the wet tyre. So now onto the slicks. It'll be interesting to follow their lap time increase, hopefully.
Just one quick update, gather from a couple of people listening, and thanks to the lovely Fee Miller, who's reported that I believe on the stream you can't hear Louise in pit lane. We're working that problem.
Yeah, so most people also complaining they can hear me on the stream, so maybe we'll swap the two.
What we could do is swap mics with Louise, and that yellow at turn 1.
Now let's try Louise Beckett again.
What?
Hello, caller.
We can hear you.
Fine.
Nobody else can. Interesting, we've got the option of hard or medium this weekend, and that's less related to track temperature. It's not going to be in the 60s, even Fahrenheit, never mind Celsius. That's about abrasion and tyre life, I'm assuming, Ant.
Well, like we know, this circuit is very hard on the tyres, so you can afford to get onto those slick tyres quite early, despite there being a lot of dampness out there. As here are the Ferraris coming in. So this is the car 50 that Louise was just talking about. For those of you, if you couldn't hear her listening in back at home, then she was talking about these Ferraris coming in. The 50 will be on the medium tyres. You can just see there the... Oh, sorry, Louise has just corrected me. The hard tyre on the 50. I thought I just saw the yellow compound. We can hear from Stoff Van Dorn in the meantime.
So far, 93 tyres did not switch on. We want to stay on track to see how long can we survive.
Gather we still can't hear Lou, so that might be beyond us immediately, but we'll crack on.
Yeah, so she said that the car 50 going onto the hard tyres, the car 51 going onto the medium tyre.
So again, it's all about learning what works.
Yes.
You just heard from that message to the 94 Peugeot. 93 is on slicks, can't get them heated because, of course, there are no preheated tyres here, so you can't get them warmed up. And this is what we...
Again.
Yeah, this is what we found in Spa. Yeah, Haas Racing. This is what we found in Spa, isn't it? That coming out onto a cold, wet track on cold slicks, they stay cold.
That was close.
That was close.
And this is where the challenge of this year, with no tyre blankets, of course, in a bid for sustainability and motorsport across the board. It's a concept that FIA are pushing for, and it's the right thing, not to be wasteful, of course, with energy, with this global championship. And it's one of those small steps that motorsport's trying to take with the help of the FIA pushing that, but it makes it for an incredibly hard challenge for the drivers, particularly in conditions like this here. And it's not cold. The ambient condition, we're in the 20s here, but it's just that damp track coming out the pits with no tyre blankets is the biggest challenge a racing driver can really face.
There is somebody used to the English summer. It's not cold, we're in the 20s here.
That's fine.
No, it's not. Because
it is fine.
Track temperature in the dry was only 29 degrees.
Oh, sorry, I meant ambient in the 20s.
Yeah, no, but the track temperature was only 29 degrees in the dry yesterday. It'll be lower than that because the water has a cooling effect.
It's no Nürburgring, just put it that way.
Well, no, but it's no Aragon either, with 65 degrees of track temp. Great.
Watching the 85 Iron Dames car here, and 2 points to make. Iron Dames yesterday welcoming a delegation of 7 female drivers from via the Japanese Auto Federation. Great to see that alongside what we always get here at Fuji. Dozens of school kids doing all sorts of fun things, including holding their own press conference with the drivers. The other quick thing to mention here is this is a bit of a farewell tour with the World Endurance Championship alongside the European Le Mans Series. This will be the last time the Japanese fans get to see GTE cars in anger. 2 more races to go, of course, in the WEC, 3 more in the LMS. These cars are then done, and we move to LMGT3 next year. So Ferrari, Corvette, Aston Martin and Porsche, the farewell tour.
So for the people that are new to the World Endurance Championship, Graham,
different regulations.
Explain the difference between a GTE car and a GT3 car.
So GTE, principally, different engine management systems, different electronics. The principal difference for the drivers is that a GT3 car's got anti-lock braking. Here, it's a lot more of a, it's not analog, but an analog process. It's a more pure driver's car.
Downforce-wise, speed-wise, how do they compare?
Not a lot, depending on the balance of performance you apply to the cars. So you're not going to see a dramatic difference in pace. Slick's going on the Ferrari now. It's a great shot of the back end of this circuit.
Oh, and you can actually see the hillside behind the main grandstand there, which half an hour ago was completely obscured by clouds. So the cloud is rolling away, and so it is drying up a bit.
Yeah.
And essentially, the GTE rule package was designed for factory drivers in factory teams. It's a more aggressive,
yes,
harder to drive, edgier car.
More freedom of design in those cars.
GT3 was designed 20 years ago, 15 years ago, as a Pro-Am category, and so they are more forgiving for the gentleman drivers. And in our GTE spec cars now, it is a Pro-Am category and will remain so next year. So
there's all sorts of nuances around it. What you are going to see is a change of the guard in two ways next season. We're going to see the end of these fabulous cars in competition. They've been with us as GTE since 2011. Since the year before the FIA World Endurance Championship, and they've done sterling service around the world, including in North America, where they've already been replaced by what IMSA call GTD, same basic principle. What you're going to see is more variety. We don't yet know exactly who's coming. That will emerge in the coming weeks and months. If you look at Dorian Pin and the Prema LMP2 pits,
which has been one of the stars, yeah, definitely one of the stars of the season so far, and part of the Iron Dames program as well. You could see there on the Nomex top that she's wearing, but yeah, with the Prema team in the LMP2 cars, which again, on top of next year's changes, we're going to wave goodbye to in the World Endurance Championship until we get to Le Mans, of course, where
and that's the key thing. I know there's been a little bit of misunderstanding, misinformation is a derogatory term. I won't use that. LMP2 is not going away from Le Mans. Let's make that absolutely clear. Absolutely not going away from Le Mans, but it will leave the World Endurance Championship. LMP2 will continue in the European Le Mans Series, in the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship, and in the Asian Le Mans Series. But there will be, we are told, by none other than the ACA President Pierre Fillon, at least 15 LMP2 cars at Le Mans next year, but a two-class championship coming in 2024.
Yeah, just looking at the back to the action here, and as the circuit continues to improve and teams are out there now on the slick tyres, you can see the speed difference between the Peugeot there coming out, still warming up their tyres in the car 94, and Mike Conway behind the wheel of car 7, who's got his slick tyres up to temperature. The difference is massive, so we're going to see a lot of performance differences between the colder tyres, warmer tyres in conditions like this, and now the lap times are starting to tumble. So yeah, just I was going to say Mike Conway leads the way with a 32.9. Instantly, Laurent Vantour takes that top step with a 32.919, just, well, 1,000ths faster than Conway. And the 51 Ferrari also on slicks, working its way around the final quarter now.
Before the session, we saw Roger Penske in the Porsche Penske Motorsport garage. And his car's first and third, right rear puncture.
Yeah.
On
Francesco Castellacci.
Francesco Castellacci. Is Castellacci in the car?
Yeah.
Now that's unusual in these conditions. I mean, this
been contact here
with into Europol.
I think that was quite substantial contact, wasn't it?
Yeah,
It was
and
just
that was
twitch.
a big twitch under braking. The Inter-Europol car locked up, just had a little twitch and accidentally slapped the car. So that was Fabio Scherer in the Inter-Europol car.
Winner of Le Mans, of course, Fabio Scherer. So he was doing the overtake, and then at the last minute, you could see there was a great shot from the onboard of the car behind. You could just see that left rear step out as Castellacci made his way towards the apex. And
Scherer's made his way to the pits. Castellacci taking the shortcut up the hill there.
Didn't see the lead up to that. Was he on the way out the pits?
No,
he wasn't.
No,
he was just taking the inside line. Yeah.
The thing that's difficult is that the GT cars do brake incredibly late.
Yes.
And it can catch you out when you're in a prototype. You think, I've caught them on the straight, I've got more downforce as well, should be able to brake later. But in these damp conditions, the GT car's natural kind of mechanical grip, so not downforce, you've got the mechanical grip of the tyres and the sheer weight of the car, and the softer nature of a GT car, allows it to brake quite late, and it can often catch you out when you're in the prototype, and that's pretty much what just happened there. And at the last minute, he's thinking, well, I've committed now, is Scherer, I've committed, I'm going to have to try and make the move work, and he's on the damp, and then the left rear kicks out, and that's how the contact happens. He's a lot of damage, you can see there on the left-hand side. Yeah, so he's panicked basically at the last minute, put a bit more brake pressure on, and something's given. This is riding on board, so you see that we're catching the Ferrari, cars coming out of the pits on the right-hand side as well, but that's mere distraction. But he's on the white line. He's too late. He's just too late, and he's put too much brake pressure on.
It was the white line, wasn't it?
A bit on the white line as well, and that didn't help. But it's the fact that it was too wet on the inside. That's not the racing line, and yeah, it was a bit of a move that you would try to make, say, like last couple of laps of the race if you're under pressure for position from the car behind, not in a free practice session. You got to let it go in a free practice session.
Just about make its way back now to this long pit in the pit lane. There's a long kind of entry to that. Just a quick reminder, by the way, if you're enjoying the action this morning, live and free on YouTube, obviously we're live for qualifying and then tomorrow for the race on the app and on our usual broadcast channels, but you can learn more about the FIA World Endurance Championship via YouTube, and there is an event preview with Alexa and Sam from the FIWC introducing the field here. Absolutely encourage you to take a look at that and joining us for the action where points are awarded, and those still, what, 65 points available this season, and a lot of very tight battles. Just really 2 titles already settled. GTE Am has already gone to the Corvette team, and the Teams Championship in Hypercar, this emerging championship that will feature the non-factory cars, because that's been, you know, a bit of a slow burn, if you like, in this real first year where this has exploded. Hertz Team Joe to have claimed that title, but boy, oh boy, there's still a lot up for grabs, and the points gaps are still very tight.
Watching the Alpine there, working its way through turn 4 and the exit of turn 5. For me, it was always just one corner, but they've got 2 different corner numbers. And yeah, it's quite a long right-hander. You feel a lot of G-force in the car, but Alpine, don't forget, they'll be in the Hypercar category next year with their very exciting looking Oreca chassis that so far we don't have in the World Endurance Championship. We see it in the IMSA series, and the car is a bit of a beaut to look at and goes very well indeed. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing Alpine join the mix in the Hypercar category next year.
The car looks great.
It's a handsome looking thing.
We've seen the car out testing. I had a quiet chat with one of the guys, doesn't really want me to tell you who, but says there is a lot of work to do, as there always is to these cars. They are extraordinarily complex machines, but very encouraged with the early signs as the 54 car has made it back and is going to reel back into the garage for attention.
Hopefully it was just that right rear that
it was coming round a long time with that shredded.
He was being very, very careful.
He did a good job there.
So much damage. I mean, you could see quite clearly the carcass hadn't come off the rim, but it was completely removed from the rim. So the wheel was going round, but it wasn't attached to the tyre. Let's have another attempt to hear from Louise Beckett. Louise. Oops. Good stuff.
That was quite interesting for everyone watching that replay of the Toyota overtaking into turn 1. So in a similar situation to what we've just been talking about with Fabio Scherer and Castellacci into the same corner, the Toyota was caught out by going onto the wet stuff before braking. And the dry line, see here as well on the inside, on the outside before turn 10, you've got to be on the dry stuff. Like I mentioned before, you're into that kind of single path scenario where you're just desperately trying to hang on to that drier line for the grip when you're on the slick tyres. As soon as number 8 ventured onto the wet stuff, same as with Scherer, you're a passenger. You're going to lock up and you're going to go straight on or either hit the car alongside you. So you've got to make that decision and be aware of it. Yeah, you see Castellacci said, yeah, look, talking to his teammate, yeah, it was just a bit of side contact. Hopefully the car's okay. Is that the rear end coming off the back of that car, or is just the way it was moving around on the jacks? Who knows? But
there was a driver change as well into Europol. When we saw the car in the pit lane, Kuba Śmiechowski was getting in, so Fabio Scherer is available there for comment. But I mean, we've just seen the number 8 Toyota who was driving that, Brendan Hartley. Yeah. So you can rib him about that when you do a little interview with him later.
And here's another. So look, the Ferrari catches the Aston quicker there, and immediately will get back onto the dry line on the left-hand side of the track. That's your best place to brake. That's the driest part. It's very hard to see. It depends on how your TV's tuned, I think, or however you're watching this right now. But very hard to see that slightly darker surface, the wetter stuff, and then the slightly dry line of the slightly lighter grey of the track, and that's the bit you're trying to hang on to. And here's another situation where you venture out onto the wet stuff around the outside, but quickly back onto the dry to continue the speed. So you're having to think about this from inside the car now. It's not easy when you're in there as well with a littered kind of windscreen full of debris and oil. You can't see necessarily the drier part and the wetter part. So there's Castellacci watching back, watching back on the app, and he's going to look at that and go, yeah, I wasn't really to blame in that move.
Yeah, no, he absolutely was flawless at that. You know, he stayed online, he didn't move, and he's now wondering why. But why did he hit me? Well, he didn't hit you. He lost the car, and the car hit you.
Well, so for as long as I've been coming here with the WC, we've always talked about turn 1 being tricky. Turn 1, it's trickier still in these conditions. It's that tight off.
Even in the dry, it's hard enough to overtake a GT car, let alone when there's a bit of damp on the inside as well for good measure. And I'll give Fabio Scherer the benefit of the doubt. Maybe he didn't realise just how wet it was on the inside, as Brendan clearly didn't as well. So, you know, it's very difficult right now. And it would be easy to say, oh, you know, put sole blame and, you know, slam him for his error.
What's that for you from the car's position?
Yeah, I think car number 34, he just came out of the box the lap before, so he was on cold tires, and I think on the first lap he was a bit too optimistic to try to pass. You could literally see that he had no grip, he could not stop the car, and he just hit me. Yeah. So just this mistake from him.
Yeah, we could see that. Do you know what damage has done to your car?
I think it's just the wheel. I think the suspension seems okay. Davide will go out now, and it's okay.
That's good to hear.
It's our jolly for the race, so we are good for the race.
Good stuff, thank you.
Yeah, Francesco.
You know, sorry, Graham, watching that again on the onboard, I don't actually think Scherer wanted to overtake. I think he had a look.
I think you're right.
Then I think he couldn't slow the car down. Then panicked and thought, well, I better go for it now. Yep. And then it locked up finally and hit the... I don't think he actually meant to brake as late as he did. I think he was merely just having a bit of a look at the start, realised he was on the wet and thought, oh no, I'm going to have to slow down more than I expected, and then ran into troubles.
By the way, this is the newest car on track. This is a debuting Porsche 963, and there'll be people screaming at the moment on social media saying, no, they're at Monza. Not with that car. That car left Monza and went into service as the team Proton Competition's car in the IMSA series. This is the second chassis for Proton Competition, and it's going to be its race debut this weekend.
And on their real debut in Monza,
they led.
It was. I mean, I know they didn't make it to the end of the race, but they oh so nearly did. And I was well impressed with their first venture into the World Endurance Championship in a brand new car.
No testing.
Brand new rules for that.
No testing for that. Throttle sensor caught them at the end, but. Yeah,
of all the things to go wrong,
sensor, albeit with a little bit of pit stop interruptions there, they led the race twice. We've so far seen both of the Porsche privateers with Hertz Team Jota lead races on at least 2 occasions. It's great. It's we're seeing close competition. We're seeing a flavour of how this World Endurance Championship is going to develop, with more cars coming from factories. We've got 3-4 more marks to come next year. We wait and see what the entry list brings us for next year, and more privateer cars to come in future
And what
years.
a good advert for Porsche as well, because so far they're the only manufacturer that's done this in the World Endurance Championship in the hypercar category, where it's pretty much, and they're showcasing that exactly with the Proton car, it's a plug-in and play car. Jota as well just narrowly escapes the 51 that couldn't slow down in towards the turn 10 hairpins we talked about earlier on.
That was Antonio Fuoco, was it?
Number 51.
Yeah, that was
Fuoco.
Fuoco.
That was close.
Yeah. That was close. That's closer than you want, but better in free practice than in the race. And,
It says Giovinazzi, sorry, Martin.
No,
Giovinazzi at the 51.
Giovinazzi is in the pits, but he's only just got into it, I think. Maybe that was.
Well, Fuoco's in the 50. So
Sorry,
now
yes,
they're doing
you're
the drive.
right.
This is
So
Collado
you're
getting
right.
in the 51. So yeah, that was Giovinazzi into turn 10. So he did the right thing, and that's, this circuit is brilliant for that, because you do get punished when you go off the track, but you're not necessarily going to damage your car. There's a bit of grass there on the left-hand side. He peeled off and took avoiding action. That was a wise move there by the Le Mans winners, the car 51.
Change of nose for, I'm not going to say front nose because you don't have a nose on the back. Change of nose for the Toyota. And Anthony, instead of making adjustments to the car manually, they will adjust a new nose set and put it on. This is one of the, each of the cars is allowed one area of aerodynamic adjustment, and on the Toyota it's the nose, right?
No, it's the rear.
It's the rear.
What's actually going on here, sorry to interrupt,
Okay.
Martin, but what's going on here is consistency between noses.
Right.
Because you can get mild discrepancies with the build. You see such a big element of the car.
Yeah.
And of course it does create a lot of downforce. You can't adjust that downforce, but you can sometimes see discrepancies between noses. So what they're doing there is just checking in case they have to make a quick nose change during the race at any point, or even in qualifying,
that it's right.
That you got the same numbers coming from the two different noses.
Two things. First of all, water back on the camera lens. Secondly, Toyota changed the nose, car went down. Hang on a minute, car went back up again. What happened there?
Don't know. Can tell you though, Son of America came by us there.
I know.
And that car tops the session. Cadillac with Alex Lynn at the wheel of the number 2 car. 1:30.914 now at the time to beat, if that's what we're going to play. And I think some of them are at this stage. And Cadillac going very well indeed, as they have been all season.
Now, we talked about teams that haven't been here. Richard Westbrook has never raced here, which seems unlikely for somebody who spent so long racing in sports cars.
Yeah.
But he spent much more of his time going the other way across the Atlantic. So
it's basically, I think Richard made some bad choices in his youth. And that's just continued for most of his career.
Became a racing driver and very successful.
No, he's loving it, and had some fabulous scenes with some of the amazing Japanese fans here. And Richard, because he's not had that experience of coming and racing here, not quite sure how to take the fact he's been presented with all sorts of fantastic fan-created. What I saw was pictures of all three of the drivers in the Cadillac embedded in perspex and with its own custom-built stand, and he was asked to sign it, and of course he did. You could see this is not what he's used to. You don't get that back in Worcestershire.
It is, in fact, his first rodeo. Brendan Hartley has just been pipped, has just gone to the top of the times, pipping the Cadillac. So two very quick sectors from the Toyota. Sector 1 and Sector 3, they were purple in, so the fastest and the slowest sectors. So that's quite interesting, isn't it?
Sector 1 on this track takes you down half of the main straight through turn 1 towards the fast left-hander of turn 3, which then gets you into the second sector through turn 3 left-hander, then that long right-hander we talked about before, turn 4 and 5, into the brilliant turn 6 and down the hill towards turn 10, that's sector 2, so a really important sector. That's where Alex Lynn still holds on to the fastest sector of all this session. And then the final sector takes you from turn 10 back all the way through the wiggly stuff down towards the start-finish line.
Yeah, it's going to be a delay for the number 56 car, which will be coming into pit lane at some point pretty soon. PJ Hyatt has been penalised. He has been told to crossing the pit entry white line is going to get a 5 minutes stop and hold. So the "do you think he saw us" question?
Yeah.
Yes, they did.
Well, which means obviously the fans are going to get much more opportunity to see
look at
Rexy
Rexy. There you go.
Isolated in glory on the pit lane. I was just thinking, actually, there's no escape when you're a driver, is there, Ant? Not only does the data tell everything, the onboards tell everything, but your own teammate is watching you on the onboard from the garage. You can't get away with anything anymore, can you?
Must have been so fun being a driver back in the olden days. You know, you could just make anything up and nobody ever knew. You're relying on fans and marshals to see what you're up to because the team had no idea. Now, no escape. Everyone from any angle, anywhere, even the sensors are watching you.
Well, I mean, as you guys will be aware, we interact with fans on for a range of social media during some of these broadcasts, and I'm keen to remind them how lucky they are to be in this era of motorsport where just about everything is available everywhere. And one of my early passions in motorsport was the Japanese racing, because it's so very different. Trying to find anything to actually just open this up to a bit of fandom was very difficult. This is a fabulous opportunity to get up close and personal, in televisual terms at least, with these fantastic cars.
And that's one of the great things about coming and racing in Japan, or watching racing in Japan, is that you're driving along on the road and you go, oh, Yellow Hat, oh, that's what they do.
Yes,
oh, Cosmo,
yes,
that's
yes,
what they...
yes.
All these sponsors that you've only ever known as a name or a logo,
Yep.
you have no clue what it is. That for years, Mazdas at Le Mans were white with a blue square with 1, 2, 3. What on earth is that? Well, it's a transport company. It's a sort of DHL, if you like. But you don't know these things until you come here and see the logos and what they refer to.
So we want to try this rear heave that we started the weekend with, which is in the sister car. We can afford to lower the rear ride height slightly as well, so hopefully this helps.
Anthony?
Yeah, so the rear heave is the vertical motion of the car as it goes up and down the rear of the car, sometimes known as the third element as well. You can see them working on the back of the car there. So it controls the ride height of the car at speed and over bumps, but it's mostly as the downforce starts to increase on the car. That's what it was just saying there. So I would deduce from that they're going slightly stiffer on the rear heave, so they can afford to lower the car down because it's going to be that stiffer suspension. It's not going to be bleeding down as much at the end of the straight as it would do if it was softer. Like I said, a compromise around this track. You might want a softer rear heave for the final sequence of corners when it's very tight. It will give you better traction with more vertical movement in the car, but at high speed it can help for you because you're running the car lower, and that means that you sometimes generate a bit more grip and stability in the car at higher speed, but you lose a little bit of compliance from the car, so it doesn't help your braking that much either. So it is that compromise. They feel like, clearly at Porsche, that they've seen something good from the other car and what they've tried earlier in the weekend, and they're reverting back to that.
But what we don't know is whether they were putting in more compliance or taking out compliance.
No, I'd say that.
He just said, we're using the heave from car 6.
But like I say, I deduce from that they're going to go, because they can lower the rear ride height, it must mean, for me, it means that they're running a stiffer rear heave. They're going stiffer because they can run it lower.
But it's
if
wet,
it's
so
softer,
they might be running it softer.
If it was, they might have gone that for the wet session in the beginning, run a softer rear heave to help that compliance and a bit of traction as well. But going stiffer with the suspension setup says to me that, we want to run the car more aggressively in the high speed, and therefore we can afford to lower the rear ride height because we're running a stiffer rear suspension.
Just saw Ben Keating. He is apparently coming out on a quali sim run, so it's going to be interesting to see how long it takes to get heat into the tyres, because again he'll be on a slick that's not preheated. The team was saying that the peak of the tyre performance is about a 4-lap window, and after that you've lost the edge on it, and that's in terms of, you know, qualifying new tyre performance. Fastest car in GT Am at the moment is the D-Station Aston Tomonobu Fuji. That's the black and green car. This Aston Martin is Amador Harty. This is 12th out of the 13 cars. So there is the quickest car.
But there's another significant moment in GT Am, which is that as Ben Keating was rolling out and getting some warmth into those tyres, that car has dropped from second to third quickest. Second quickest now is the number 30. Sorry, it's the number 54 AF Corsica. In fact, it goes top as I speak, which means they were right. The damage was indeed only to the wheel. That is the car that had the incident earlier. It's a second stop and go penalty, 5 minutes, this time for car 21. And again, it's for crossing the pit entry white line. 56, Rexy is serving that. Here's the naughty boy in the 21, who is aboard that car at the moment.
Hiroshi Koizumi.
It is Hiroshi Koizumi.
So he ought to know better, and he ought to know the track better than that. However, sometimes you do end up in places that you don't want to go. PJ Hyatt is parked in Rexy. Let's hear from the fastest of the two Toyotas, faster.
Brendan, advice from Brendan, he was having rear locking turn 10, so he would advise driver adjust 5+2 for turn 10. We expect it to start raining lightly in 3 or 4 minutes, but so far there's nothing. I'll keep you advised. And some hypercars coming down the straight now. You'll come out in front of 51 Ferrari and 99 Proton.
As we see the Ferrari in the garage there, nice moment to actually point out a little bit of synergy with Formula One. And I think you were there for dealing with that broadcast, Ant, and Ferrari introducing the colour scheme and actually showing off the car in the paddock.
Yeah, so this time last week I was there in Monza, unbelievably, here now in Fuji, and it was nice to see Ferrari, you know, pay tribute to the efforts and the victory of their success at Le Mans, and with a hypercar, and they ran the F1 colours in the famous yellow and red colours that we see here on screen with the Ferraris. I love that colour scheme, and it was great to see. I think even Charles Leclerc himself said, I actually prefer the overalls with the yellow on it as well, because it's such an iconic Ferrari car. Obviously you got the scarlet red, but it's always been, it ran in tandem, the yellow as well. And I love it. I think it looks very Ferrari, doesn't it? And yeah, it was nice to see that showcased in Monza on the F1 car.
It also seemed to bring a bit of performance and good luck as well, which doesn't hurt. Let's hear from James Collado on board the 51 car.
Okay, mate, let's see if we can help the understeer in high speed by V'ing a little bit more in for 4-5. Try a little bit more of a V in 4-5.
Okay. Anthony?
Yeah, like I said before, turn 4 and 5. For me, in the dry anyway, it's one corner, but in the wet, you get into that situation where you can experiment with it being 2 different corners. So you're constantly turning right, and that's the engineer there saying, look, try, I know you're picking up a bit of understeer mid-corner through 4, so try slowing it down or going even a little bit wider in the middle of turn 4 to pinch the car more and turn the car to get straighter through turn 5. So making more of a V shape of the corner, because the corner itself is actually a U shape. So what he's saying there is to go in possibly a little bit faster, stop the car more in the middle of the corner, rotate the car more, so turn the car more in the middle of the corner by being slower at the midpoint, and then getting the car straighter for the exit, so V'ing the corner.
Was released and then held.
He was released. Well, he wasn't held because the thing, he stopped because he could see something in front of him. A little bit of a change here.
We got a message from race control. We saw this. I'm often told by Eduardo they don't listen to us, but they do watch.
Yeah.
Bad condition of gloves, driver 34. It says Scherer. I thought
when Scherer came in, we had an onboard. Clearly, it said Cuba on the side of the glove, and there was a driver change because Schmichowski was then in the car and still is. Well, it may be that before we got that picture, they had the full live stream and actually Fabio Scherer's. I mean, that's one of the things with having seams on the outsides of gloves is that they do look like they're fraying all the time because the seams are on the outside.
No, there was a clear hole in that glove.
And the FIA in particular are very tight on this now with the clothing of drivers since the crash of Romain Grosjean, where he obviously burnt the hands in that fire incident.
But yes,
no, but they clamped down on it even more so. And actually, the fireproof overalls that everyone wears now in top flight FIA racing, whichever category you're in, they've actually made them thicker. They're heavier duty to withstand higher temperatures for longer because of that.
This is Kuba. This is Kuba Schmitkowski. And
so Fabio Scherer had Kuba gloves on because he's got yellow gloves. The gloves we saw that had Kuba written down the outside of the fist were green.
So the 5 minute stop and hold for Team Dinosaur.
Rexy has elapsed. They are back out on track.
He's evolved.
Light drizzle till the end of the session is expected. So, by the way, how is the quali sim going for Ben Keating? He hasn't set any faster segment times.
No.
So,
but remember,
not well then.
No, not necessarily. Remember, because you would expect the fastest laps to be set by the pro drivers in this. Ben is going to be slower than the pro drivers.
It doesn't matter. He has to qualify the car.
Yeah, that's what I mean. But his quali sim may be slower than their practice laps here.
Well,
they're not hanging around.
The other thing is, it doesn't matter that it's not quicker than it was when it was slightly drier. It matters that it's quicker. Yeah, okay.
Oh, yeah, look at the rip on the top.
Yes.
Oh,
that's what they're looking at.
But is there? Oh, yes. It was torn all the way through, hasn't it?
The report was bad conditions of
frayed.
But
it says Cooper.
Very frayed. It doesn't
matter about the name. It's they're concerned about the tear on the glove.
Yeah.
So the answer, I think, here is it was Cooper getting into the car. Timing and scoring still showed Scherer in the car because he hadn't left the pits.
Yes.
So they were looking at the timing and scoring screen, but the car was on pit lane. I think that's the issue. We'll soon see, because is Cooper going to get out the car? Yes, he is.
Because Albert Costa was there ready to get in. So Costa, not De Costa, not at all confusing for all their junior careers in any way, shape or form, especially when they both raced in GP3 against each other.
So there's two possibilities. Either it is the gloves that Cooper was taking off there, or Fabio Scherer's left his gloves at home.
We've heard team radio about trying different setups for the number 5 Porsche Penske. The car has been in the box for a while. What are they working on, Michael?
Yeah, we're just trying to do the last adjustments for the race or quali. It's been a bit tricky with the weather so far. These practice sessions has been changing. And we're just trying to develop the car all the time. So just a small last-minute change to see if we can hit a good setup for both the race and qualifying later today.
Okay, and we're going to get out the way because this car's going to come out soon. Thank you.
I was going to say, by the way, just to complete the circle on the gloves issue, we did have some years ago here in the FIA World Endurance Championship a quite terrifying incident involving an LMP1 car with a fire in the cockpit for what was then the Lotus LMP1 car, and saw the driver for that car, Christophe Bouchou, at the airport the following day, and a terrifying tale. And frankly, that kit saved his life.
Yep.
End of story.
You don't wear it for fun or for show. It's there to do a job. So that's why, you see it there on camera. Someone with eagle eyes there that spotted the fray on the gloves, or the hole in the glove, and it's completely the right thing to do. It's an unsafe bit of equipment.
And even as a club racing driver, when you go and buy the mandatory protection, you go, oh, that's expensive. It is. But petrol is just as flammable in a club racing Mini or Fiesta as it is in a Formula 1 car. You are just as likely to get hurt if you buy cheap, shoddy stuff or use out-of-date stuff. So, it's how you value your life, and that's the be-all and the end-all of it. Decent helmets, hands devices, worn properly, up-to-date, proper fireproof equipment. A good race is a race where everybody gets to go home afterwards. And that's the absolute overriding concern in this championship and in every other.
And happily, we are living and working in an era where that's what we expect.
Yes.
And that absolutely should not be messed with. Quick moment on board the number 4 car. Change for that team here this weekend.
Yes.
With a new team manager. I say new team manager.
New to them.
New to them. Peter Collins.
Yes.
Ex-Lotus, Williams and Benetton Formula 1 team back in the 80s and 90s. and is looking after this effort.
Now, there was a little message on the screen about an incident I don't think we saw involving this car and
the 34.
The 34 car. So
Tristan Vautier and Kuba, and here they are together again.
That 34 car is really is going to be spending a lot of time in the stewards room after this session.
They've got quite the shopping list.
Get it all out the way now in a free practice session, trouble-free race.
The stewards are going to have the gloves off for that one.
Oh, I see what you did
good.
there. Stop it.
Holy gloves or for...
Now then, what is the significance of the reversed race suit? Is it a fueler who's got a yellow suit with a red band? Car controller. To make him more
I'd not
visible.
seen that before.
I don't
today.
think I had as well.
So whether or not there's a change, but it's the car controller.
Have the guys been saying, we can't pick you out? There are too many red race suits.
Maybe.
Because red's, especially red, white and black car liveries, red is a very common race suit colour. So maybe they're going, we need something more flamboyant, please.
We need somebody that looks like Ronald McDonald standing in front of the car. That's what it is.
There we go. Look, this is what Ferrari brings to this championship.
Well, and lots of new eyes, and having the F word in the championship is just a phenomenal, pulling apart of the curtains. 5 years ago, Ferrari would have had far fewer fans watching them because Drive to Survive hadn't happened, and Drive to Survive has brought in a whole new generation of viewers to Formula One who probably didn't really even know that it existed that much and really didn't care. And because of the new eyes on Ferrari, the fact that they now come here, win Le Mans, and are there then saluted at Maranello, it's all over the YouTube, it's all over the YouTube, it's all over social media, it's reported again in F1 coverage, it again brings new eyes to the championship. Hypercar is doing that, but Hypercar plus Ferrari is double plus good.
Here's the other point. It's not just bringing eyes to the championship, it's bringing eyes to motorsport.
Yes.
And this is, I think, where F1 has had some lessons to learn. It's learning them through more engagement through new media. And we are in an era now where there are people involved in this, whether it's a brand, whether or not it's a sponsor, whether or not it's the drivers that are demanding the opportunity to do more and different. 86 car in trouble here. This is the
Mike Wainwright.
Yep, GR Racing.
That's up at turn 15, isn't it? So it's a tricky corner, that one. You're cornering and braking, and then accelerating, reapplying the throttle on the exit, all while going through the corner.
There you go. I was about to say, I wouldn't mind betting there was another car involved. But he was distracted by the Hertz Porsche behind him and just lit the tyres up coming off the apex.
I wondered if it was going to be contact towards the apex. Actually, he did lose it all by himself, but maybe a bit of pressure from the car, who knows? But you can't blame the Jota for any of that. It's just, I think, it just goes to show how traction limited you still are around that part of the track, and the rain is continuing to fall. Don't forget, as we saw on a message on our screen, light drizzle expected until the end of the session. And I wonder how that's going to affect the Porsche Penske number 5 that are making that suspension adjustment, I believe, for the drier conditions just when the track starts to get wet again towards the end.
I wonder. Let's catch up with Louise in the pit lane. Lou, have you got your wellies with you? Are you going to break them out?
With me, but I was just looking through the timing screens. I don't know if you've mentioned the 99 Proton competition yet, because, they're middle of the field. This is only their second outing after we saw them in Monza.
Well, they've been in the top 3 in this session as well, so they are having a very good run. And again, although Proton have raced here before, they've raced here with those Porsches, the GT cars. They've not raced here with the brand new Hypercar. I mean, Monza was its debut, so all right, there are similarities in what the car requires to Monza, but not really.
Once again, we're seeing this Peugeot, the 94 car, they're driven by Loic Duval, putting pressure on the Toyota in mixed conditions. That Peugeot always goes well, doesn't it? We saw it in Le Mans as well.
Did. Came alive.
It comes alive.
Absolutely came alive.
Mixed or wet conditions, that's its thing. And look, looking down the inside, that's a wetter part of the track. Are you going to get it stopped in time? Yes, he does. And Loic Duval, don't forget, very experienced. He's one of those drivers who spent a long time over here in Japanese championships.
A long chat with Loic. He was fairly dismissive of a situation that Peugeot might win a race fairly soon. But
look at the speed difference.
There you go. I mean, conditions are going to be everything, as they always are for every race.
Well, this is classic Fuji, isn't it? Wet, dry, something in between.
But this is a fabulous part of this formula. You know, what we've seen with Hypercar is so many different solutions to the same problem. But what that means is the cars perform differently in different weather conditions.
Yep.
We saw it absolutely clearly at the Le Mans 24 Hours. Never seen more clearly than that. And it will continue as these cars continue to evolve and develop, which they will.
And on different circuits, because like GT cars, they all come from a very different base. LMDH, which is the IMSA rule set that is part of Hypercar, all of those cars have three things in common. They have a mandatory tyre, as we do in Hypercar. They have a mandatory electronics package for monitoring the systems. We don't have that in Hypercar, but they also have the same hybrid drive, mild hybrid system. Other than that, chassis can come from anywhere, bodies can look like anything, engine you use, we've got the V8 in the Caddy, you know, I mean, you can use whatever you like. And that's the whole thing about the Hypercar umbrella rule set, whether it's Le Mans Hypercar or LMDH, you can do literally whatever you like with the car. It can come from anywhere, from a clean sheet of paper to develop from an actual road car. So it gives variety. Different cars will suit different conditions and different tracks.
60 of Claudia Schiavone recovering. It's another big spin this time from Mike Wainwright.
It's getting very much wetter, and
it's heavy right now.
Louise reporting she's getting quite wet now.
Just one quick thing to finish on that point you were making, Martin. We're talking quite a lot at the start of this session about the strength that Toyota's got here because of the experience, got the data. They have one critical weakness here this weekend, and that's going to get better as time goes on. They've not got a clue where their opposition's strengths and weaknesses are here. They don't know, so they can't cover some of the areas that will emerge through the 6 hours tomorrow with the strategy they've got. They've got to do that live. That's a strength of the other teams.
Well, it's the first victim of war, apart from truth, is Plan A immediately gets torn up. And that's exactly the same as happens with the race. I mean, Ant doesn't need telling. Everybody has a plan, then we'll try and do this, then we'll try. We're not going to rigidly stick to it, because the moment you run across the start line, everything goes out the window and you are making it up on the hoof, right?
Yeah, you know, you've got to live by your senses, that's the thing. And, you know, this practice session, if it were to be completely dry for qualifying, once again, so that's now 2 out of 3 practice sessions where the weather has really played its part and taken away that learning process for running the car in the dry. Just look at what happened to the Porsche Penske team in this session, trying a different suspension setup for drier conditions, didn't get to put it into practice, quite literally. So they now go into qualifying a little bit with one hand tied behind their back, not knowing the outcome. And all the time, you're trying to focus on how the car will behave in the race conditions as well, wanting to be on a slick tyre for longer to see what the degradation's like. Remember, you've got the 2 different compounds of tyre in the Hypercar category, and you know, they've got to decide which one they want to be on for longest, and none of that could have been decided in this session.
And that number 5 Porsche did 24 laps compared to 32 or 33 of the Toyotas. Oh, 8 or 9 laps. What difference does it make? You're kidding.
No, a lot. You know, every lap's important.
That's a junior single-seater race around here for a start. But, yeah, every single lap's important, and every tiny bit of learning. I mean, we're not talking massive slices of performance. This category, this professional level of racing, you're talking tiny increments like you are in any professional sport. And it is those tiny increments that can make the difference, Graham.
So Toyota topped the session. It's a 1:30.068. Then the first the Peugeots, the 94 car. Then it's Hertz Team Jota, the quickest of the Porsches and 3rd quickest overall. The second Peugeot, 4th quickest. Then the second of the privateer Porsches rounds out the top 5 from Proton competition before Ferrari number 51. 7th quickest, the number 8 Toyota. Cadillac's number 2, 8th quickest. Then the 2 Porsche Penske Motorsport cars, 5 and 6. And the 50 Ferrari and the number 4 Floyd Van Wall car round out the Hypercars. United Autosport top LMP2 ahead of the 36 Alpine. It's the 23 United car ahead of the 36. Then the 2nd United car. They're on a rich vein of form at the moment. And then in the GT Am category after that incident earlier on for Francesco Castellacci being rudely nerfed off, I'm afraid, by the 34 car. Is that a bit of a weigh-in boxing match?
Just checking to see whether Ollie Jarvis is allowed lunch.
There you go. It's the 54F Corsa Ferrari that tops the times in GT Am, ahead of the 777, the home team, D-Station Racing in the 777 Aston Martin, and the 77 Dempsey Proton Porsche. That's your top three. It's close. The conditions are changeable. There are championship points up for grabs, as so many of these teams are racing for championship glory, and the rest of them are looking to get points, podiums, and a win on the card.
Glory.
It's really looking as if this could be a real classic here.
And don't forget, in qualifying as well, there is that 1 point. It could all come down to 1 point in the championship with 2 rounds to go. And we've got that coming up next in qualifying, of course. So who will get that extra point for pole position?
Before we finish the show, you can, of course, catch up with us live in qualifying on the app and on some of our broadcast partners. And then 6 hours of racing tomorrow. Look on the FIWC.com for local times for those broadcasts. It will be Martin Haven and Davidson, myself, and Louise Beckett bringing all of the action, every single moment to you. And there is no better place to be to watch that than right here, unless you're lucky enough to be one of these fans trackside.
Absolutely right.
And Quidditch.
And Quidditch. And is this the first Peugeot pole
in
history? In Hypercar
we
history?
Can be... It's not being just romantic about the fact that Peugeot are beginning to hit a rich vein of form. The concept suits this track.
Yep.
The conditions so far have suited that car. And
Jean-Eric Verne was really interesting to listen to in the pre-event press conference. He said, you don't see from the outside the colossal amount of work that everybody is putting into the... I mean, everybody is in every team, but he again was just... talk about Monza and getting their first podium, a year to get onto the podium in what, when they started, was quite a thin hypercar class, and it's got fatter and fatter, or more and more competitive. But he said the boost, it was the boost of confidence and the release of pressure. Thank goodness we can really do it. It's, I mean, look, it's super competitive.
Tiny
look how
gaps,
tight the field
thousands
is.
to
Look
most
how
of that.
tight the field is.
Well, let me just have a quick look. 130.068, the quickest car in the field. Before we get to the first car is in the 131s, it's 8 cars within a single second in this hypercar class. It's super close.
And that's in mixed conditions in free practice. It will be closer in qualifying.
Again, before we finish this broadcast, remember, there are other ways to kind of catch up with all of the action, not just here, but leading into Fuji. There is time before you join us for the broadcast for qualifying to catch up, both on the race preview on YouTube with Alexa and Sam from the FIWC, and also to catch up with full access and the background stories behind the stories you saw broadcast for Monza. And the same will happen again 10 days after this. That, by the way, is not the cue for Martin Haven's autograph. That's much longer than that, Martin. That is the cue for the autograph session. It's an amazing thing to watch the difference in the way that things are managed here.
Well, it is. But again, everywhere we've been this year, Spa, Monza, goodness, the sea of humanity in the pit lane at Monza. After coming from Le Mans, where it was just, you could not see the ground.
No.
You thought, okay, it's going to be a little. It was not a little less. It was absolutely. This championship has and especially after 2 years of no being able to go. After
Lifting
COVID,
off.
after lockdown, after the restrictions, everybody is so keen to come out and do things. And these cars, these names, these big factories have just added fuel to the fire. It has really, really got massive fan engagement now, and just so thrilled to see it.
Look, not only are we recovering in terms of the numbers of people coming to the tracks here and the numbers of cars on the grid here, we're starting to see the calendar expand again. Back to 8 races next season, going to new markets or returning markets. That will be a trend that will continue moving forwards. I know there are people all over the world that would love the World Endurance Championship to come close to them. If you can please come and see us trackside. Come and say hello. This is access like no other at a World Championship level.
And by the way, if you are in Northern Europe anywhere, or Southern Europe or anywhere else, tickets for next year's Spa race go on sale in the next few days. If you've never been to Spa-Francorchamps, then you should treat yourself. It's easy to get to. It's fabulous to spectate at. If you have been to Spa, like having been to Le Mans, you don't need to be told. No. You're already a convert. So, yeah, I mean, it's great to see the championship expanding, and let's hope that ambition continues. There's the Loic Duval replica overalls on that young lad.
I'm just loving that.
It's
that orderly queue.
It's
as
about
well.
half
Message
a mile
to the rest of the world.
Half a mile long.
Message to the rest of the world. That is how you queue politely.
Yep.
No barging and shoving and shouting, and standing there politely.
And we'll get to you signing your poster eventually.
Hello, France, we're talking to you. Queuing in France is a very organic. Look, whose replica helmet is that? There is always somebody who walks around in full Alan McNish Audi overalls.
It's Alan McNish.
With helmet.
It's Alan.
No, because it's tall.
He can't leave it alone.
No, he's relatively tall. So but it is fantastic. I mean, the fans here are as educated, informed and dedicated as you'll find anywhere on the planet.
You know, you've never been more welcome trackside, I think is the other message. And you were saying about Spa. Come to Spa, and if you've not been for a couple of years, you're going to be amazed by the uptick in facilities now for fans. Bring your family, bring friends. If you're coming to a race, bring somebody with you. Spread the word, because I've been watching sports car racing for decades now. I don't think the racing's ever been better.
No.
I think it's absolutely stunning, and it's going to get better still with the addition next year of BMW, of Alpine, of, we hope, Isotta Fraschini and Lamborghini. New cars are already out testing. Drivers are all kind of angling for the seats that are there. The quality of drivers now in sports car racing is...
And the quality of engineering as well. I speak to many engineers from different categories around the world that are now looking and turning their attentions to sometimes even running dual programs themselves with the World Endurance Championship. They're turned on by the technicalities of this new hypercar category. So, yeah, it's a great championship to be commentating on, and really looking forward to qualifying coming up next.
Qualifying will be on air at 2:30 local time, 14:30 local time, which is at 07:30 GMT. You're going to have to work it out
check
for yourselves. Check your phone for details. 14:30 local time, that's when we'll be on air. Autograph session is underway, and the crowd here are just, as ever, desperate to get to see their heroes up close. Not just Toyota Gazoo Racing, every single one of these teams have fans. Lots of banners in the grandstand. Welcome back, Andre Lotterer and stuff like that.
It's like a Formula E run down the paddock, wasn't it?
It's like the Stig's tall relative. That's Alan McNish's tall relative. In fact, Alan McNish's tall relative is his son Finn. So I'm not quite. The height didn't come from Alan or from Kelly McNish.
No, I'm not being
frankly,
funny. No. Martin, Alan McNish's tall relative is his entire family.
You guys are in so much trouble next time I see him.
I know. But it's only because we love him that we can throw him under the bus so repeatedly. And we would have done it when he was here anyway. Look, we started with Circuit Safari, and we end with the fans as well, because actually that's why Ferrari come racing, that's why Toyota come racing, it's why Porsche come racing. It's for fan recognition, it's for buyer recognition, it is for the kudos of winning races and championships that matter. And if no one comes, no one cares. Now people are coming because they're able to, and they're showing you just how much people do care. And again, Danny Kvyat, there's a little clique of fans for every single driver here. And whether they've ever seen them in the flesh or not doesn't matter. They will still have fan favourites.
They're about to.
There'll be people here who've never seen, the towering height of an Ollie Gavin or the shrinking violet that is Alan McNish. So
it's freakish.
It is. But I mean, every fan here, has got a car favourite or a team favourite, and again,
well, they're fanatical in the truest sense, from my experience as a driver, and certain fans just latch on and support, like you saw with the Danny Kvyat sign. They latch on and support they're so dedicated to that person that they support or team, and they'll be putting their banners up in the grandstands as well come race day tomorrow.
Well, that is it for free practice. Qualifying at 2:30 local in just a fraction under 3 hours. We'll see you then.